eat every piece of your buffalo. Now that saying, I don't know where it came from. It probably is an old Native American saying, in that if you are hunting something, it's kind of like waste not, want not. If you do kill a buffalo, make sure you use every little piece of it, and none of it is wasted, because God knows when you're going to get the next buffalo. So you need to use every little piece of it. Now, in the podcast episode, again, the one I was listening to, the Kevin Smith one, he was talking about one of the actors recently who'd gone online and had spoken about applying for a part in Back to the Future. He had auditioned for Marty McFly way back when it was just being, put together. I think Ben Stiller one time was actually one of the people who auditioned for Marty McFly as well, so there's a little bit of trivia for you. But anyway, the actor back then, I don't even know what his name was, to tell you the truth, but he had said that the storyline for Back to the Future was a lot different than the one that was actually released. He said there was no DeLorean at the time, and I don't even know if there was a flux capacitor or there was the plutonium or whatever he needed to power up the DeLorean. What they were actually using was Coca-Cola to power up the time machine. Now again, don't ask me what physics were involved in that or how they explained the Coca-Cola could make you go back in time or forward in time, but that was what they used in the time machine. Now, it came to a stage in the movie where Marty, I think, ended up on one of these blast sites. So back in the 1950s, you're probably well aware, when they were testing nuclear bombs in the US, they would have these kind of makeshift towns with all these kind of dummies standing in the street to make it look like it was a normal kind of US town, and if a bomb exploded nearby, they just wanted to kind of see how it would affect the town and the destruction it would cause. So they would build all these kind of mock-up towns, but Marty ended up in one of those mock-up places, and of course he knew the bomb was going to go off very soon, so he had to get out of there as quick as possible. So he knew he needed some Coca-Cola, but where are you going to get a Coca-Cola in the middle of the desert? And then he realised that, he's in a 1950s town and Coca-Cola was probably big back then, so there's a good chance that in one of the fridges in one of the houses in this mock-up town there should be at least a bottle of Coca-Cola in one of them. So I don't know what way it happened, but he raced around and he was looking for this bottle of Coca-Cola, and I'm not sure whether he did get one or whether he didn't get enough, but he found out that he wasn't going to be able to time travel out of that point. So he was trapped and the bomb was about to go off. So what he did was he knew that back in the 1950s that the fridges back then were kind of heavy duty, and they were, I don't know whether they were supposedly lead lined or whatever, so he climbed into a fridge and he survived the explosion. Now, you're probably listening to that last part there and you're probably saying to yourself, that sounds familiar, I think I've seen that song before, where have I seen it? Well, I'll tell you, it came up at the very, very start of Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. You probably have seen Indiana Jones in that kind of mock-up town, and again, I don't know whether it was Germans or whatever were putting off an atomic bomb in the town, and he was racing for cover, and of course he found a fridge, climbed into it and survived the explosion and the radiation by being in the fridge. Now, the scene in the first in the Back to the Future film, I'm not sure who wrote it, but Steven Spielberg at the time loved the scene so much that even though it wasn't used in the movie, he still held on to it, and he held on to it for many years later. And then when Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull came up, he decided now was the time to blow the dust off it and to reuse it. Now, why am I talking about buffaloes and Back to the Future and all those different things? Well, I'm here to tell you that, if you are creating something today, keep in mind that you might be able to reuse it in the future. So, as I do sometimes with my social media images, sometimes rather than me coming up with an idea for social media today, I go back through the stuff I've already created before, and what I will do is I will take the text and I'll plot it on a completely different background. I might dress it up a lot better than I had originally done it, and I'll put it out there again. Or if you are a fiction writer, you might have created a backstory maybe for a character, and for whatever reason it just simply didn't fit into the fiction book that you had created. So rather than you tossing it away, why don't you hold on to it? Put it away on your hard drive, and when it comes maybe sometime in the future, you never know, you might be looking for some kind of adventure that your character is going on, and you have this piece already worked out, or this scene or whatever, and then reuse it. Or even a scene in your book is, that didn't do as well, or maybe in a forgotten about book, why not just, dust it off again, reuse it just like Steven Spielberg did, and put it back out there again? Because in the majority of cases, your audience will probably never have seen that. Like in the case of the Back to the Future storyline, nobody ever seen that apart from the actors and the people auditioning. So it was all new to us. So for Steven Spielberg to use it again, it all looked like new original content. So keep that in mind today. You know, if you are creating any piece of content, again, I'm a big fan of reusing, repurposing, breaking it down, maybe changing its format or whatever. Keep that in mind today, whatever content you are creating. Is there some way you can get the last bit of meat off the bones of that piece of content? You know, can you reuse it with a different background? Can you add another tip to it? Do you know something that you didn't know back then? Maybe that thing that you had said years ago was a thing that people should know about. What if you found out then, well, now that it was actually false and you were actually giving people the wrong advice? So maybe something like that. Have a look at whatever content you have. Again, sometimes in fiction we do maybe write pages and pages of content that we never use, or maybe you might be somebody who has written maybe a blog post on a particular topic and it just didn't fit in on the day, or it just didn't seem right with the rest of the content you're putting out. Why not reuse it? Or even, you know, if you've created a couple of videos or something like that, is there any way maybe you could edit down small portions of it? Maybe if it was a video with maybe 5 or 6 different tips, could you just edit it down, maybe just take one tip out of that, maybe a couple of seconds of a video, and then post it on Twitter or something like that as your content in your social media? So as the lad said, I forget who it was, had brought it up, but as I said on the Kevin Smith podcast, they had said to use every single piece of your buffalo. So keep that in mind today. Try and get as much meat off the bones, because it's going to make it easier for you. You're not going to have to come up with original content ideas, and you're not going to have to look at a blank page. You already have something that probably the majority of people haven't seen, heard, or read before, and now is the time to get it out there, reuse it, and make it easier on yourself. So as always, I hope I've shown you something maybe you can put into use today. Now, if you'd like to find more of this great content, you can subscribe probably on YouTube, or you can subscribe through the podcast, and I'll send the next couple of episodes straight on to you. So as always, have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.